Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
What the heck is an annuity? And more importantly, is an annuity right for you?
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money. The WorryFree Retirement with your host, five-time author and retirement specialist, the annuity king himself, Tony Walker.
Annuities. Some people love them, and apparently some people hate them. But regardless of what you, me, the internet, some grumpy old fellow on TV that keeps talking about how much he hates annuities, regardless of how we feel or what our opinions might be of annuity, here is a fact, and you can write this down. Of all the types of financial products you could own, there is only one type of financial product, one product, that can guarantee, I'm using the word guarantee, emphasizing that, guarantee an income you could never outlive. Well, welcome to the WorryFree Retirement, folks. And on this date, December 18th, 2018, the stock market is on its ultimate roller coaster ride. You know, it kind of reminds me of a roller coaster. The stock market gradually does do this, folks. It goes up and up and up. You know, you go on that first incline, and then, here we go. And it's going down pretty quickly, which is why this show is dedicated to savers. Now, let me preface this. We're going to have a great show, and we've got 4 more coming up over the next 5 weeks total. We are going to do the deepest dive I've ever done into the subject of annuities. Folks, I've been using these products for over 34 years. You understand, when you're listening to the source of any information, you got to consider the source. Now, there's a lot of things I don't know about in the financial world. It is a huge, big financial world. I'm not going to be a know-it-all about everything, but I know a lot about annuities. Since 34 years ago, when I first got licensed to sell annuities, I have personally sold, 2,500 annuities totaling over $300 million of protection for my clients. So I've seen about every situation out there. I've seen how annuities, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And unfortunately, I've seen many of you who come to me after purchasing annuities, and unfortunately, you don't even have a game plan on how to properly use the darn thing. So yes, I can understand why some people hate them. The problem is some of these people that hate annuities, number one, don't know anything about them, or number two, they're from Wall Street. And Wall Street doesn't like annuities because, in most cases, they don't pay a bunch of recurring fees. So the purpose of today's show is, number one, to introduce you to what the heck is an annuity, and number two, then explain the 4 types of annuities and how we use them, or maybe how we don't use them. I think it's best to, before we move on here, let's just really cover the definition of an annuity, because if we're going to talk about annuities, there's a lot of misconceptions. Incidentally, we've got a free download of this book. This is a really good booklet I wrote. It's the Annuity Decision Guide for Savers. I highly encourage you, after watching today's show, go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. It's on the homepage. Just scroll down. It's a free download, and this will cover a lot of the information and be a good summary of what we're going to talk about today, the Annuity Decision Guide for Savers. Okay, let's go to the definition. So what the heck is an annuity anyway? Well, first of all, annuities are contracts. And this is a biggie, because with most investments, you're not investing in a contract. When you invest money in your 401k, you don't have a contract for a mutual fund or an ETF or bonds. You've got investments. And those investments are subject to risk. There's really nothing backing those investments, so to speak. So they can go up and they can go down. That's why your stock market is all over the place, because it's not a contract. There's nobody standing behind that contract. So who issues the contract then? If you say, well, Tony, yeah, I'd like to know more about annuities. How come I don't see annuities in my 401k plans? Because annuities are issued by insurance companies. Folks, insurance companies don't govern and manage 401k plans. That's Wall Street's business. That's why you don't ever see annuities. They would rather put your money at risk and try to, quote, grow your money, which is great. When it's growing, man, everybody's excited. But as soon as it starts hitting that downhill slide, again, savers get really jittery. So they're contracts issued by insurance companies, and issued to individuals. Well, if you do an annuity, what are you called? It's kind of a strange word, but you're actually called the annuitant. And you could also be the owner. Annuitants and owners can be the same. They could be different. Now, this is where, folks, it gets complicated, and this is where a lot from Wall Street run for cover. Although they bash the annuities as complicated, they don't take the time to understand them. This is why I've worked so long with these products. Now, quick situation. Let's throw this graphic up. Here's how complicated they can be, and if you're not working with the right person, you can cause a lot of problems with these annuities. Many of you might have heard about surrender charges, and folks, they are real. That is one drawback to annuities. If you don't know what you're doing or use these properly, you can really get stung if you cancel these things. Case in point, a lady comes in the other day. Her father had recently taken an annuity as the owner, transferred it into an irrevocable trust for the benefit of her, the daughter, and 2 siblings. Now, the problem is an insurance agent advised this person to put it in the trust, change the ownership, because it would, quote, avoid Medicaid and all that stuff. And I said, I'm not going to get into that. That's legal advice. This insurance agent probably doesn't know what he's doing, but I do know this. You've created a problem now since he's died. And she said, well, what's the problem? I said, let me see that trust document. Read the trust document. The trust says that when the grantor dies, that's the father, the trust has to terminate. That's not good, because when the trust terminates, it says all assets have to be liquidated. Another not good, because when that annuity is going to be liquidated, she's going to incur a huge penalty close to $20,000. Just a penalty, because she can't keep it. And since he was the owner and died, normally when the owner dies, the penalties are waived. But he had transferred the ownership to the trust, which doesn't waive the penalties. So folks, it's just case in point with annuities. If you're going to buy an annuity, think about this. All of us get the same commissions. They're all filed with the insurance departments. I'll tell you what I'm going to get paid. But why wouldn't you want to work with somebody that understands the annuities, and as a client recently told me, has a team of staff behind them to support and service the annuities? We don't charge anything extra for our services. We calculate your RMDs. We tell you when to take out the annuity. We do all the paperwork. No extra cost for any of this. So I can't imagine why you wouldn't at least get a second opinion from us. So back to the definition. Okay. Finally, when you say I want an annuity, I'm going to invest in the annuity, technically you're giving a premium. And that premium is an exchange for what I call mailbox money. So keep that in mind. Whenever an insurance company issues a contract, they call it a premium, not an investment. You give them a premium to protect your car, protect your home, protect against lawsuits. And in this case, you're protecting yourself from not running out of money in retirement. Now, there's 4 types of annuities. There's fixed interest, fixed indexed, immediate, and a 4th type is the one that I first sold in 1986 that today, for savers, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. When I come back, we're going to talk about this particular annuity. You stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Can you afford for your money to take a hit with the stock market being so volatile these days? Nobody can time the market, but having a retirement game plan with Tony Walker Financial gives you peace of mind and sleep insurance. Learn how to prevent losses in your retirement accounts and plan your retirement around an income you can never outlive. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com today to schedule a personal meeting with Tony to secure your hard-earned money. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement, folks, and we are covering a true deep dive into annuities. What the heck are these annuities? Why are they growing in so much popularity? And what are the 4 types of annuities? And we're going to cover each annuity in detail today and for 4 more weeks. We're going to finish out the 5th week with how these annuities work within the Worry-Free Retirement Split IRA concept. It's an ingenious, simple concept for savers to follow, but we felt like you needed to understand these 4 different types of annuities. Incidentally, you might be watching the show saying, Tony, I got an urgent need. I can't sit around and wait over the next 5 weeks for you to cover annuities. I've got 401k I need to roll over. I'm thinking about retiring. I've got money languishing in the bank. I'd like to meet now. Absolutely. It's anytime. It's at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. The best way to meet with me in person at no cost or obligation, click on that Let's Get Started button. and then we'll set up a convenient time for the two of us to meet at either our Bowling Green, Kentucky or Louisville, Kentucky offices. You know, it's interesting you think about annuities. We can't really give testimonials in this business. I couldn't drag clients in here, for instance, and say, hey, Tony Walker is the greatest thing since sliced bread. As an investment advisor, we can't do that. But we can go back in history and see what famous people have purchased products. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of history. And so I've got a quiz for you. During the 20s, some of you may know this, who was one of the most famous baseball players to ever live that played baseball in his heyday in the 20s? Now, if you said, oh, I know that one, Tony, it's the great Bambino. That's who you're talking about. And you may be saying, who's the great Bambino? We've got a few kids on the Sandlot here to help us understand who the great Bambino was.
The Sultan of Swat.
The King of Crash.
The Colossus of Clout.
The Colossus of Clout.
Babe Ruth! The Great Bambino!
Okay, obviously we're talking about the Babe Ruth. And the story goes something like this. Babe Ruth was making a killing for back then in the 20s with his salary. Now, even back then, they worry about this today, of course, professional athletes have a tendency to kind of blow through money. That's always been the case. So fortunately, Babe Ruth's manager saw this fact that Babe was making a ton of money, his career wasn't going to last forever, and guess what he recommended the Babe, the great Bambino, do? He introduced him to a friend of his who was an insurance agent with, back then they were called the Equitable, huge insurance company. Now they're called AXA. But anyway, he suggested he meet with this Equitable agent to purchase stocks and bonds and mutual funds, blah, blah, blah. Mutual funds weren't even around then. But anyway, get in the stock market? No. The Babe purchased a bunch of annuities. In fact, history tells us, of course, these resources that we've dug up here tell us he put between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. Now, that's a lot of money back in the 20s into these fixed annuities. Now, fast forward, what do we have a few years later? Yep, the Great Depression. Everybody lost their shirt. In fact, it's estimated that some people after the Depression that were 100% in the stock market, it took them anywhere from 15 to 20 years to get back to break even. Can you imagine? I don't know if that'll ever happen again, but it could. It went down 40% in 08. But guess how much the great Bambino lost? This is the best time to have a zero batting average, folks. He lost nothing. Now, you say, well, Tony, what type of annuity does that? Well, it has to be, of the three, a fixed indexed, fixed, or an immediate. The fourth type, the type I began selling in 1986 when I first got licensed to sell securities, won't guarantee that unless you put on an income rider. We'll get into that later. And that's called a variable annuity. Now, why do I not suggest savers even consider a variable annuity? Well, think of the word. By the way, I've studied savers so long. If you think of the saver personality, this may sound like you. Here's the personality of a saver. They like consistency. They like safety. They like simplicity. They don't like a lot of fees. They hate fees. They like to keep things in a guaranteed state if they can. They're okay risking some money, but pretty much they want something guaranteed. So if you think of the word variable, they don't want a variable retirement, folks. So a variable annuity, essentially what that is, it's taking all of your money, you're putting it in what we call an annuity chassis. Yeah, an insurance company is, quote, backing it, but as we're going to see in a minute, that thing is at risk. And the fees, this is where when you hear people say the fees on annuities are high, folks, they're referring to variable annuities because in most cases, fixed interest annuities don't have any fees. Fixed indexed annuities don't have any fees unless they add an income rider. And finally, immediate annuities don't have any fees. So let's think about this. You want something consistent, you want something safe, you want to know it's going to be there, you don't want to wake up in the morning and see it's down 20-30%, and you don't want to pay a lot of fees. Well, I just described a variable annuity is where you're going if you invest in annuity. It's the opposite of everything a saver wants. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back and I'm going to get the whiteboard out and I'm going to diagram and share with you, first of all, what is a variable annuity? How is it affected by the stock market? What is an income rider? You may say, well, I got a 6% income rider, Tony. What's that all about? I'll show you what that is. And then finally, what I'm going to do is talk about the fees on these variable annuities and how much of an eroding factor they can be to your wealth. I'm going to get the whiteboard out. You stay tuned. I'll be right back. Annuities. Some people love them and some people hate them. Regardless of how you feel about annuities, one thing's for sure, annuities are the only financial product that can guarantee an income you can never outlive. I'm Tony Walker, and regardless of whether you're thinking about buying an annuity or you have a current annuity that you would like me to review, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Since 9/11, we've written over 2,500 annuities, and we can help you by getting started now.
And now it's time for Tony in the Trenches.
Our Tony in the Trenches is really interesting. At our workshops, we conducted one recently. It is inevitable when I do a question-answer session following the workshop, a typical question goes like this. Tony, what happens when something happens to you? That's a great question, and it's a question you should ask any financial institution or any advisor. We have in place a continuation plan. Myself and Heather Hughes in the Bowling Green office, she also is a licensed registered investment advisor. In my business, we make sure that all the staff is taken care of. We have no debt in the business, and I do have a contingency plan in place. So don't worry about that. I don't have any plans on retiring anytime soon, but it's a legitimate question. And again, any advisor should be asked that same question. Good question. All right, let's get back to the annuities. We're talking about variable annuities here. Now, this is not going to be to scale. I'm just trying to help you understand why savers really don't like variable annuities and why, when in 1986, I used to sell a lot of these. But as I got into retirement planning and I wanted more guarantees and less risk, obviously variable annuities do not fit the bill. So let me show you. So basically, let's imagine you came in 2006 and you put a premium of $100,000 with a company that was selling a variable annuity. And let's imagine in 2006, since it is totally in the stock market, the market went up from 2006 to 2007, 2008, went up again, and you're loving the variable annuity. Again, basically a variable annuity is an insurance wrapper, a contract, around a bunch of mutual funds. So it is full of risk, folks. So in 2008, 2009, here was the problem. Again, this is not to scale. You think you got all this money. Let's say you're 3 or 4 years away from retirement. Maybe some of you experienced this, and now the market crashes. So basically, you have no floor whatsoever with a variable annuity. Now, they can put some floors on there. They can add some things, but remember, there's a lot of risk here. So let me give you a thought. I've got a 23-year-old son. I've got 3 children. My youngest is 23. Let's think about risk. Remember, insurance companies are in the business of risk. An insurance company is backing this variable annuity. So my youngest son, Anthony, wants to get car insurance. He's a pretty big risk, right? He's younger. The car he drives, all of that. You compare that to the premium for me, I'm less risk to the insurance company. So therefore, my premium is less. So you look at this and say, Tony, what's that got to do with a variable annuity? This is where the fees come in. Okay? So when you hear people say they hate annuities and the high fees, they're referring to variable. So I created an annuity fee sheet. I was asked years ago by a large insurance company to speak at a conference and address agents on how to understand fees. So I created a fee sheet. We're going to put this full scale, and I'm just going to go over with you the typical fees of a variable annuity. All right, let's start with the administrative fee. This is going to look like a sushi menu, folks, by the time we're done, but the administrative fee is 0.15%. All right, so that's not a big fee. Let's not worry too much about that, but it's still a fee nevertheless. Now here's where we get into the big fees with variable annuities. It's called the mortality and expense fee. You see, because they don't know when you're going to die, and they've taken on all of this risk with the annuity, and depending on whether they provide a death benefit or not, this annuity has to have an additional charge. There's more risk. It's kind of like my son is on the auto policy. The insurance company has more risk because they can't guarantee what the stock market's going to do. So in this case, that's about 1.15% depending on the company. We'll assume we're making up a company. We'll call this Shifting Sands of Texas. And again, we're talking about a variable annuity here. The annual fee is really not a percentage. That's usually $30 or $40 a year. I don't know why they do that. I don't know if the advisor takes that and takes his wife out to lunch. I don't know what that's for, but that's usually stuck on there. Now here's the biggie. This is the one you never can find. In fact, you have to actually look up what's called the prospectus. That's a complicated way of saying, that's Wall Street's way of sharing with you information you're not going to understand, but it's called a prospectus. Now, we in our office, Heather Hughes in our office, we provide a free service called a fee analysis. So if you have one of these annuities and you want us to go through this worksheet and look up all these fees, at no charge, we'll be happy to do that. I analyzed a couple of annuities the other day. Now, they were pretty large annuities, but we found out we could save them over $6,000 per year. I didn't say one time, $6,000 per year in fees. Now, that's a lot of money you could put in your pocket. So the problem is the management fees, the mutual fund people, they're not doing this for free. They have to charge a fee. And it can range, but we see it on average, it's about 1.5%. Now, many of you have these annuities and you say, but Tony, wait a minute. The fellow or gal that sold this to me said that it was guaranteed at 6%. You tell me this stuff ain't guaranteed? What they're talking about is something called the income rider, or that's where you would get your mailbox money. But folks, that's 6% when you die, that's gone. An income rider is for you and possibly your spouse for lifetime income, but that's not what the annuity is actually guaranteeing to your beneficiaries. And that comes with a fee, and in this example, it's usually higher. We'll put it at 1%. Okay, so let's add these up. I left off the $30 the advisor takes to go out to lunch. So we take 0.15, 1.15, another roughly 1.5 for the management fees, and then an income rider fee of 1. So if we add that up, let's think about this. That is 3.8%. Now, as we look at our graph, why is that so important? Because in the first year, they took out roughly $3,800. If it went up to $200,000, they took out roughly $7,600. Even when it dropped, let's say it dropped here to $50,000, they still get their fee, which is, roughly whatever that is, $1,600. So the facts are, no matter what this thing is doing, it's kind of like the money management business, somebody's still getting a fee whether you're making money or not. So here's my suggestion to you. If you're sitting there, you've got a current annuity, maybe you've been to one of these dinner seminars pitching annuities, maybe you just want to understand annuities better, why don't you do two things? There's two things you can do. We can either meet in person, you and I, face to face. I do it all the time. People say, is that what you do full time, or are you a TV show host? Folks, the meeting with people face to face is my full-time job. This is my side gig to share with you what I learn each week when I'm meeting with all these savers. But anyway, we can meet in person. Or number two, if you want some more literature on annuities, the truth about annuities, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. On that homepage, click on the Let's Get Started if you want to meet. If you'd also like to download our free annuity decision guide for savers, you can get that right away, and I think that's going to really help you understand annuities. All right, we're talking a lot about variables, variable annuities. What does the Bible have to say about our life? And does sometimes it feel like things are out of whack? Nothing's really seeming to go smoothly? Your life feels like it's one big variable? Well, God's got an answer for that. I'm going to get me a cup of coffee. I'll be right back.
Tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market? Let Tony Walker show you how to smooth out the ride with your money. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
All right, welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement. We've been talking about variable annuities today and how savers don't like variable annuities. And you may be sitting there thinking, Tony, I feel like my life has been one big variable. How in the world can I get a handle on things, and what does the Bible have to say about me worrying less, not only about money, but just about life? One of my majors in college, I double majored in broadcasting and psychology, but my psychology background kind of evolved because my dad was in that field. He was in the mental health field, and I always thought it was interesting. I'd go to work with him sometimes and kind of just hang out, how different people were and the things that people struggled with, and the fact that I just kind of enjoyed how people are different, what makes them tick. Now you fast forward to 1991 when I became a follower of Christ, and I had to reconcile what I'd learned in psychology, the study of the human mind and how people behave, with what I learned about God. And you know what? They do coexist, because we have to live in the world, we have to communicate and deal with people, we got to deal with our flesh, but in the meantime we've got this God over here who is constantly looking out for us. So to me, it was very liberating to have this background in psychology, and then thank God revealed to me there is a better way than trying to always sit there and figure out what Tony Walker's up to. What I found is God knows Tony better than Tony does. Now, we all know that everybody's wired differently. I think we would admit that. I talked about that earlier in the 3 Personalities of Money book. But in the end, our flesh continues to struggle. We all have legitimate needs. We all have things we worry about. And yes, we should plan for our future. It is normal to worry and be anxious about these things. But the problem with being anxious, sometimes impatience creeps in. Now, we always tell people, well, just pray about that. Well, I always say, what are you praying about? Well, I've been praying for the last day or so, and God didn't answer my prayers. Well, maybe you're getting impatient with your prayer life. Remember what Jesus talked about. Sometimes you have to stand at that door and knock for a while. In fact, let's go to Isaiah 30:18, Aaron. Isaiah 30:18. It says, therefore the Lord longs to be gracious to you, and therefore He waits on high to, I love this, have compassion on you. For the Lord is a God of justice. But look at this, how blessed are all those who long for Him. So it appears that God longs to give us what we need, but He also wants to see if we long for Him. The Apostle Paul knew something about being patient. He encouraged the church at Philippi with this. He said, do not be anxious for anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And then, of course, we probably know the rest of that verse. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds. So, folks, if you're struggling out there, if you see this stock market all over the place, if you're tired of 1% CDs, if you're not sure about annuities, first of all, we have got to learn to be patient. You're not going to make money overnight. If you do, you're going to take risk. If you're a saver personality, you've got to take the long haul in mind. This is what we do with the worry-free retirement process. The foundation is we assume you don't want to worry about money, that you don't want to be anxious about money. Well, if you're not going to worry and you're not going to be anxious, you can't be putting all of your money in things that have risk. This is why we love annuities so much. So there's a couple things you can do right now to take advantage of our services. You can just meet with me in person. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to do so. It's easy to do. You just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and click on that Let's Get Started button. Now, all the information is confidential. We will contact you and meet you at either our Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky office. Also, again, we have the free download of the book, The Annuity Decision Guide for Savers, as well as the free download of Mailbox Money for Life. To get that, again, when you're on the home page of TonyWalkerFinancial.com, just scroll down and download those free copies. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Remember, next week we're going to talk about the second type of annuity and provide even a deeper dive into what are annuities, how do they work, and are annuities right for you. And so between now and next week, you remember, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.
Thank you for watching the Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker. If you need a safe and simple game plan for your retirement, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and schedule a free, no-obligation meeting with Tony.